Content warning: suicidal thoughts, self-harm, addiction, panic attacks, binge eating, substance abuse, alcohol, marijuana/weed, and self-harm. I have been an anxious person for as long as I can remember. When I was young, I constantly worried about being the perfect oldest daughter who got good grades and set a great example for my younger sisters. As I got older, my feeling of failure expanded to other aspects, like when friends and boys thought I was annoying or too much. In my mission to sacrifice self-care in an attempt to save others from feeling as miserable as I did, I coped with my inability to stop beating myself up for not being those things by eating. I would mindlessly and endlessly consume the food in our kitchen cabinet, the feeling of anxiety and self-loathing too overwhelming to deal with. Once I started dating my ex-boyfriend, my eating disorder turned into an addiction to weed. While I'm usually very cautious with substances, he normalized smoking every day until I was smoking every second, not able to feel the high I originally felt when I first started. It was a gradual dependence, one that began with only smoking every once in a while. Then I was smoking 3 to 4 times a week, and when I tell him I wanted to smoke, he'd say, "It's just like having a glass of wine every night to unwind," which, in retrospect, is not healthy behavior, but that's another issue. That summer, I was smoking every day. At this point, the weed was doing more harm than it was good. I was way more anxious, depressed, and likely to have a mental breakdown at any given moment. I was especially prone to all those things when I wasn't high, as I would wake up immediately anxious and spend my time under the influence, paranoid and restless. I would have panic attacks much more often, and my self-harming was out of control given my severe mental instability. This meant crying a lot and regressing to my high school self, who had constant suicidal thoughts and was extremely self-loathing and insecure. At one point, after my boyfriend broke up with me, I was hell-bent on overdosing on a bottle of pills, convinced I would kill myself that night. Eventually, I started smoking every day, at which point I would live only to get high. I'd wake up in the morning and immediately want to smoke, but I'd have to do things and get things done. I wasn't really happy until I smoked, and then, at that point, it was an eluded sense of happiness because it was just my addiction being done nagging me. I would call my ex-boyfriend in tears saying I was sad and lonely, and I couldn't do anything about it. I felt completely powerless, and so did he, because there really was nothing that could be done. Once he and I broke up, things got really bad, as I just kept reaching for my dab pen in order to cope with the breakup. I found myself smoking the minute I was able to, which meant getting home from classes and immediately getting high, becoming paranoid and miserable, and completely ruining any chance at being productive. But I couldn't focus on anything until I did smoke because of my addiction. It got to the point where weed wasn't enough, and I had become so used to it that my body didn't really get high anymore. I started searching for fulfillment in other empty things, like sex and alcohol. This is when I realized that weed was never going to be enough, and that I needed to detox. Once I detoxed, it became clear to me why I was smoking: my anxiety. I was able to start exercising and implementing daily things that made it easier for me to deal with not smoking, and also living in a society that likes to advertise alcohol and weed, especially to a college student. I am now 3 weeks sober and definitely don't want to smoke again. I do have horrible days that make me want to use or binge eat, but that's usually because I'm tired or hungry or some other thing. But once I'm able to identify that thing, I can use one of the many coping skills I've been workshopping with my therapist and social worker. For example, when I'm feeling restless, I'll try going for a walk or doing jumping jacks if a walk feels like too much, instead of reaching for food or weed. Or if I get frustrated with myself, I'll take a break to do some self-care, making sure I take a shower or did the dishes that day. It's weird to think that less than a month ago I couldn't fathom a life without weed, and while it's still hard to stomach at times, taking it day by day has taught me how to be happy again.